It's loading, so in just a couple of seconds, we're going to be live. Welcome everyone to our live session, How Can Men Support Gender Equality? This live session is being offered as part of the ASTRA project, aiding and supporting women in trusting their potential, reaching their goals, and achieving their career objectives. ASTRA is an Erasmus Plus project that is being implemented by 3 organizations in Malta and Italy, and basically strives to support talented women in stepping up in their careers and successfully dealing with what are societal challenges, self-doubt, and basically navigating the leadership labyrinth. Today, we have here with us some mentors and mentees who are part of the program. The ASTRA project actually involves mentoring and training for talented women in Italy and Malta. And with them, we are going to discuss the role of men in supporting gender equality. Now, I'm very quickly going to allow them to introduce themselves. We can start off with Catherine, if that's okay.
Hi, thank you very much. Thanks for having me here today. My background is in building electricity generation stations, operating stations, hydro, gas-fired, LNG, and also in construction. So I've been CEO of a construction company developing major projects here in Malta. So I'm hoping to be able to bring some of that personal experience here today. And really enjoying this mentorship process. So that's me.
Thanks, Catherine. Carla, please, could you introduce yourself?
Obviously, yes, it will be a pleasure for me. Thank you for the invitation. So I'm Carla, and I am an English teacher and examiner for my training company. Montessori Formazione is a company that is raised in Montevago, which is a little town in the province of Agrigento, near Trapani. And I started this company because I always loved to study languages. In fact, I attended the Institute of Languages, AENA, and then continued with university studies for language and communication. And I started to work in this section when just a couple of years ago, but then I really decided that it was what I wanted to be. So I started to get my certification to be an examiner and be aware and be obviously an examiner. And now I've got my own company, and we just deal with training any kind of student or a teacher or anybody that wants to actually do some kind of concourse in life and manage it to be at the top range of the scale.
Thank you, Carla. And I'm going to move on to the other mentor on this call, who is Gordon. Gordon, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Obviously a bit unusual being the only guy, but in a way, sometimes it's good. I mean, I just went last week to an event. It was organized by a women's group, about 250. And they invited me, and I said, like, should I come? They said, yes, we want men to come. And it was about, it was a bit depressing, to be honest, because it was about men putting women down and saying, oh, you're not good, you just should stay at home and take care of the kids, and you shouldn't study. So it was a bit sad. And then the second part was about, obviously, abuse, that, again, the man abused a lot of women by making them lose their confidence. So anyway, that was something which was interesting, but a bit sad. Something about me, well, I'm Indian. I was born in Malta. My businesses, we do branding and merchandise. So I go to a lot of conferences. And that's where I've seen that sometimes you go on a conference and on the panel, you only have 5 guys and no women. So I'm always trying to push women. And I'm saying, like, hello, we need to have more women on stage. And most of the times I find women have that, how should I say, that negativity that they say, oh, but I cannot compete with that guy who's up there. He's the CEO of this big department store or whatever it is. And I'm a small person. And I just maybe have 2 or 3 people working for my company. And I said, it does make a difference, because of the day, the audience likes to hear different opinions. When we hear the opinion about 5 guys, after 3 guys, we already know what the 4th and 5th are going to say. So sometimes it's good to see a different perspective. And even I could learn myself, and I say, oh, that was really good. What you call it, that person mentioned. Maybe I can use it for my business or whatever. So sometimes I think it's very important. And just one small thing is that if someone came up to me and told me talk about, I don't know, blockchain, I only know a bit, I would say yes straight away, and then I would read blah blah blah. But if someone asked one of you and said, okay, talk about blockchain, and maybe 70%, which is really amazing next to what I do, you would still say, no, I need to have 90%. So I think women are maybe more perfectionists, and I think maybe they should let go and push themselves a bit more. I mean, that's what I see, observation. And I always ask women whenever at the conferences, next time I want to see you on stage. Yes, but I'm not so good and this and that. And I say, sometimes you're even better than some of them. Some of the speakers would be really not good. They wouldn't know how to talk, and they wouldn't use maybe the body language, how to express themselves. So that's the thought of the day for me. So I like to, obviously, if I can help women in one way or another, I'm more than happy to help you guys in a small way.
Thanks, Gordon. We're going to delve a little bit deeper into those issues really soon. Thanks for sharing. And we'll move on to Claire, who is our amazing mentee on this call.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm really grateful to be here. The project so far, the mentorship has been amazing. It's been a really eye-opening journey. I am a Master of Business Administration student, and I've graduated in European Studies. And I've also been on Erasmus twice. I went to Poland and in Spain, and I've worked both in Malta and abroad.
Brilliant. Thanks, Claire. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Okay, so we're going to go into the nitty-gritty of this conversation. And I'm going to ask you all in turns to just share your thoughts on what men's role is in supporting gender equality. I know there are quite a few women on this call today, so perhaps you could share, if you feel comfortable, some examples of people near you, maybe your partners, your husbands, your brothers, and, some promising best practices, some promising behaviors, some, as I said, promising examples of what they've done or what they do to support gender equality. And perhaps we can start with you, Claire, if you'd like to kick us off.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Yes. I believe that the gender equality, it should be promoted from a very young age. So when we go into schools, it should be a topic which should be thoroughly discussed. And also looking at my younger brothers and the way we're bringing them up and what we're showing them is very, very different to the background I was brought up with, because I come from a smaller island called Gozo. So it's when I was younger, it was much more traditional than it is now. And I remember growing up, and they used to tell us, you need to play with dolls. A woman can't play football. So I've been brought up in that type of society. And looking now, I'm really, really proud of the progress we've made, but I still believe that a lot more needs to be done.
Thanks, Claire. What about you, Catherine? I know that you're not originally from Malta, so maybe you can tell us a little bit more about your perspective on this.
Yeah, so I'm Irish. And I had a very, very different upbringing. We were really lucky. In school, our teacher was she was one of the first female engineers who had ever attended in Trinity College Dublin. And out of our class, I think like 8 or 9 of us went on to do engineering. So that just shows you when you have a role model of any gender that it happens. I've had some really positive experiences throughout my career from guys. I get a lot of support with, from my partner. So I've had a constant flow of informal, not formal arrangement, but mentoring from the guys around me from the beginning, from when I started in the workplace. And I remember my first plant manager in Ahad, a power station, and I went in as a graduate engineer. And he was just brilliant. On day one, he was like, "This is what we expect of you. This is how we want you to be, and we just expect you to excel. And we're going to give you the support and all of the tools to do that." And he, to this day, I will always remember as always kind of coming over. People, good mentors, they have this kind of sense of when they just need to appear and just, to check in. And so I think it was instrumental. And because I was in a place which was 99% male, I mean, it was going to have to be male mentors that I had. So I've had a very different experience. So I'm very interested to hear about Claire's, but I will share my own.
Yeah, that's super interesting, Catherine. I always find it fascinating talking to you because of your background and your studies. Let's move on to Cicely. What is Carla's experience? What is your take on this topic?
Wow, personally, in my sector, most of it is just women. Well, we are talking about training and education in general, but my mentee was a man, and I was really pleased of it because even if Cicely can be seen as an old-fashioned region, in reality, there are some sectors that are still really focused on more a man leadership than a female, but many others are now actually moving on to a different point of view, and women are not just housewives. And but I must say that having a mentor, a male mentor, for me was actually a better point. Because I was grown in a family where there was no distinction of female and male, and I've had different experiences in sectors where there was just a male leadership in my passion, which is go-karts, and mainly everybody's male in that sector, so motor and racing in general. So I did, because I grew up in a male sector mainly, and in this male sport, I did relate better to males than with females actually, and I do think that men are give you genuine support without actually expecting anything from you. Instead, sometimes when you relate to a female mentee or somebody that's upper at your scale, and it is female, she will probably relate in a different way. She will expect something more from you, and it's not always possible. So I do think that sometimes males do bring you to feel comfortable at the same level without expecting anything from you, and they do have a sort of small difference from a relation point of view, obviously. Well, but that was my experience.
Thanks, Carla. So we've heard about men being mentors and actually supporting women in progressing in their careers. So I'll move on to Gordon, who initially shared with us his experience at last weekend's event. And I'm going to ask you, Gordon, I'm going to ask you directly, actually, what do you see as, men's role in supporting gender equality, and how do you see yourself supporting gender equality?
Cool. So I think what Claire mentioned, I think also it's the upbringing, which plays a very big part. I mean, we'll talk about Malta, because both my kids, my eldest is a chemical engineer. She works with Deloitte. And my youngest is a doctor and she works with NHS, both in UK. So when obviously they go in those roles, a chemical engineer and obviously medicine, everyone would say like, oh my God, like you're a girl, how can you go into engineering? I mean, I'm sure that both of you know what it's like. And no, that's a man's job. And even sometimes parents, we sometimes discourage our daughters, because we say, okay, no, a daughter, no, you should become a nurse or you should become a teacher. And what, you're going to go and work on an oil rig? Are you crazy or something like that? So I think that plays a very big part. I mean, in my case, I pushed them and I said, look, do what you want to do. And chemical engineering doesn't exist in Malta, so obviously she had to study abroad. So then obviously it wasn't easy, because obviously sending her abroad, you have to pay, while in Malta, everything's free. But anyway, I managed. And then my youngest, since she said I would study medicine, same thing, I sent her abroad, even though it existed in Malta, because I obviously wanted to be fair and give them the best education for both. I think we need to look a bit at the Scandinavian countries, like in Iceland. There is a law that if there's a male and a female with exactly the same education, both of them should receive the same wage. And if they don't, you could open a case and you will win the case to make sure that you pay the woman the same right wage as the male, obviously based on the same education. So I think they're much more advanced than we are. And even this thing of women's equality, like in Malta, we have in parliament that we should have so many women in parliament. To a certain extent, I don't agree, not because it's a woman, but it's like, oh, we have a quota that we need to get 20, 30, 40 women. I'm not sure exactly how many it is. So you're choosing a woman not based on her knowledge or on her education. She's just coming in. It's like she's coming in, but in reality, she's not coming in because of her education, because the quota is that, so you're coming in. So I think that I don't agree, but in a way it's good. It's a step to at least push more women to get involved with parliament and any other jobs. Sorry, give me a second. Sorry about that. So that's really my take. So I think the parents play a very big part, and sometimes obviously daughters, I mean the kids, you look up to your parents, and if your mom says, oh no, become a nurse, become a teacher, become a school teacher, or I don't know, headmistress or whatever it is, a sales girl, sometimes you say, okay, maybe I'm not as good as my brother. And even sometimes it's so funny, just a small example, when we're at the swings, imagine a boy falls down and everyone will go up to him, are you okay? Yes, come on, get up, be brave, you're a man, you shouldn't hurt. And if a woman, all of a sudden, everyone's pampering her, oh, are you okay? Sit down, can I get you some water or whatever? So sometimes women think that they are inferior to males, which obviously they're not. But sometimes it's all in the mindset. And obviously when you start young, like Claire was saying, sometimes it can have an effect on the girl. So today I'm being a bit negative. I'm sorry if I'm being a bit negative. I apologize. But
there's nothing to apologize for. And I love how you made it a little bit personal and you talked about parenting and so on. I think we're going to go back to that in just a second. But I think Claire has a comment.
Yes, adding to what he was saying, I agree with him that the goal should be equal opportunities. So I think in Parliament, they try to make it equal outcome because they want more women. And I understand where it is coming from. However, I think we should look at why qualified women are not going into politics. So I think that should be the main concern and the issue, to see why aren't these women going out to try to politics.
Yeah, that's a great point, Claire. Thank you. I'm going to go back again to parenting because I really liked what Gordon said, and it actually reminded me of something that a dear friend of mine always tells her daughters, which is literally that they can be whoever they want to be, they can do whatever they want to do, they can love whoever they want to love, which I think is an amazing message to pass on to your daughter, well, in her case, daughters. And so I wanted to ask you, we've tapped into some of the common stereotypes that are generally associated to men, women particularly, but also men. And, you know, for instance, if I think of my own relationship, very often we naturally subvert those stereotypes. So the stereotype of the woman as caregiver or the woman in charge of chores, household chores, I naturally subvert that stereotype because I am not great with chores. And actually my partner is much better at chores than I am. So I'm just curious to know, in your everyday lives, in your relationships, in your friendships, how do you subvert these stereotypes? How do you see them naturally being subverted? I don't know if anybody wants to go ahead and feels like answering straight away. Otherwise, I'll just pick on one of you. And I see Catherine smiling, so I think I'll go for you if that's okay.
I don't. So maybe I'm just different to everybody. But like I was in a meeting. We were pitching a project. And you know the way sometimes Siri answers like out of the blue, just decides to talk to you. And I was like, oh my God, he is so attentive. Like, and everybody was just laughing. And then, but one person picked up on the fact that I just instinctively have Siri as a male voice and think of him as a male assistant, you know. And we were talking about it. And I didn't realize that there was articles written about the fact that, you know, that the traditional Siri is female. You know, and I think as women, we need to also be responsible and be accountable for how we're going to see the world, and not to see the world as victims. You know, I've come across a lot of things in my career, and like I had a girl one time who didn't like the fact that turbines are referred to as female, and I was like, not really something you know, that keeps me up out of bed at night, you know, and you know, and by the same token, you know, because she didn't last very long in the job for completely other reasons. But then I got thinking, it's like, I called them all my boys. I called them all. We've got to pick and choose our battles. And I think it's up to us as women to just stand up and be accountable. If I'm not earning the same as a man, I'm going to make an awful lot of noise about that. Like, I'm just not going to sit there and accept that, because I'm going to argue for it. And I do agree, we need the structures, we need the support, we need the parenting, you know, I get it, it's real, but I also think we also need to stand up and take what is ours.
Thanks, Catherine. So subverting stereotypes by standing up for ourselves. Great. Claire, would you like to add on to Catherine's message?
I've done my dissertation on promoting female entrepreneurship in the European Union with a focus on Malta, and I did find one of the potential barriers. I did find that women, they allow others sort of to lead, or else they stay away from asking about the wage and asking about finances and handling their finances. So I think what would be best, if you go into an interview, you make it clear to yourself before what kind of wage you're looking for, what you won't settle for, and what you really, really would like, and so not be afraid of stating that.
And being able to quantify your value. Yes. Know your worth. Yeah.
That's a tough one. Gordon? I'm going to call on you.
Just thinking out loud, a lot of times in Malta, people usually don't move out at the age of 16, 18, 20, like in most of Europe, Italy, Germany, France, and all that. So most of the times they remain at home until eventually they get married or they move in with their boyfriend or girlfriend. And a lot of times the girlfriend or the wife replaces the mother. So what does that mean? I mean, like in my case, when I was married, I used to iron my own clothes. I used to make the bed. I used to do certain things on my own, not because the wife couldn't do it. But I said, no, I want to be independent. And why should I not give in my share of whether it's helping with the kids or whatever? But a lot of times I find is that they're pampered. I think guys in Malta are pampered so much that when they get married, they say, okay, oh, Claire, you're my wife or girlfriend, iron my clothes, or I don't know, polish my shoes or make the bed or whatever. Or I came after a whole day of work. Can I have a kidney and I don't know, something to eat? And like you say, like, excuse me, but even I came back from work as much as you came back from work. So like, why can't you do the same thing and say, okay, prepare a drink or a coffee for me and let me sit down instead of you sitting down? So I think this as well, I think plays a very big part. Again, maybe because I think they're pampered too much. And in the rest of Europe, it doesn't happen because eventually men leave their home and then they have to be independent, living alone. And then eventually, maybe when they have the partner, then they say, okay, we don't need to change the way we think because we're already doing those things already. So I think that plays as well a part, which maybe it's not fair on the woman because obviously she works as much as we do, if not more. Sometimes you're multitasking much more than we are. We're not as good as multitasking as you guys are. So it's more an observation. I mean, this, I think we're talking about Malta. I only can talk about Malta. I don't know how's it in Ireland or in Italy. So maybe the rest of you can give us some feedback or even Gozo. Thank you.
Yeah, what is it like in Italy, Carla?
Well, actually, is more or less the same, and I do agree with what Gordon has just said. From my personal experience, I would say that it is true that we need to speak up and make sure that our voice is taken into account the way it should be. But the same we must do with us, with the rest of the company, whichever it is, a female or male. I think, and I did say something more or less the same yesterday. I think that really the main problem is that we do not listen, and people don't listen to what we say exactly. So there are many times misunderstandings that do not get into the account if it's said by a female or a male. It's just a misunderstanding, and it should be treated as it is, not as a difference of gender. That's what I think, actually.
Does anybody else have any thoughts that they'd like to share about this? Yeah, Claire, please go ahead.
With what Gordon was saying, I really agree. I moved out of Gozo when I was 15 and I came to Malta. So I was cooking, I was cleaning, I was learning how to live independently. And I believe that's what's built my resilience. And that's what pushed me to also try living abroad, to doing Erasmus and abroad and to working abroad. So I believe that in Malta, even because of the property prices, they are really going high, and it's Right now, it's almost impossible to buy a place on your own. But at the same time, initiatives should be taken to, even if you go abroad for a few months, you rent your own place, you work there, and you try living independently. You don't have to wait until you're in your late 20s or your early 30s to do this.
Yeah, so you're talking about something that's more systemic, about incentives to actually even support these kind of lifestyles, behaviors, changes. And so linked to that, I know Catherine earlier was talking about speaking up for yourself in the workplace. And so I was wondering, because very often there's a host of research actually that shows that very often when women do speak up in the workplace, they're viewed as a bit aggressive, a little bit pretentious, a little bit arrogant. I don't know if this is your experience or, if you know of people who've had similar experiences, but I was wondering what your take is on what can be done in the workplace to change this kind of belief, what employers can do to support gender equality, if there's anything even systemic, organizational or systemic, that can be done to change certain attitudes and to break down certain barriers. And perhaps, Claire, you could start us off, since
I've actually had an experience in work where there were certain jokes being made, and it was the same about genders, where I addressed it. I did mention I didn't like it and what I would have liked instead. Thankfully, they all realized that it was a bit too much, and my team leader, who was very, very supportive, and that's when I think there was a big realization that this happened and it was actually a bit sexist. So we shouldn't have commented on that, because I used to coach kids football. So it's a bit different for me because I model and I also coach kids football. So it's two different things. And I used to get jokes about that, but sometimes it's pushed to a certain limit where it brings a certain ideology about a person and just starts realizing, this is where it comes from now.
thanks for sharing that experience, Claire. Catherine or Carla, Gordon? Catherine.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I'm speaking to people from a workplace perspective, first it's awareness, and how do I explain? So it's an awareness that we need to respect different types of people. So what we don't want to do is create everybody to be an alpha male, because not even all males are alpha males. So what we need to do is create a workplace that is tolerant of all different types of men and all different types of women. And so, look, I'm not saying every day is rosy, and I'm not saying, Claire, I haven't experienced, there's been difficulties along the way, and how you deal with them is different depending on the context and the people. Ultimately, we just need to get more people representing fairness in the workplace. And here's where, I mean, if we go back to the topic of today, where men can be, really key supporters, because you can only make, like, if you have, I'm sorry, Gordon, but like, we're mostly a group of women talking about this issue, and that is actually not, we're talking to the converted. So you actually need, and I know some amazing men who are those real champions for, and it's just respect. It's that really is at the root of it all. So at a workplace perspective, it's about training, it's about education, it's about knowing, it's about not going overboard in my head, right? So I don't like it when, because you don't want to feel like you're the token, or you're the, you're there because you didn't work as hard, or so it's about balance. But it starts with education, and it starts with, like, at the moment, from an EU's perspective, and there's a lot of law there to protect women in the workplace and women's role, and to have children and stuff. So what actually needs to happen is the cultural shift, the cultural acceptance, and the which is a much harder nut to crack. And I just think the key is men, and the key is respect.
Gordon, would you like to chip in?
Sure. there were statistics taken out, and it's like only 5% of the world's population CEOs are female, which is very sad because 5% is literally nothing. Again, why there wasn't anything to explain the reasons why there's only 5%. And when it comes, Claire was mentioning about obviously certain jokes at work. And I think as well, sometimes, like they mentioned in the event just last week, that there were not enough chairs, and a woman came in, and one of the guys said, "Oh, you can come and sit on my lap." And obviously it wasn't a very nice, okay, it was a joke, but it wasn't very nice. So she said, "No, excuse me, I'm not gonna come and sit on your lap." And all the room were all guys, and they said, "Come on, like, why are you being so petty? It was only a joke." I mean, imagine how she felt, because all the room was just filled of guys. So then it's like the comment was very bad. It was hurtful, but everyone was laughing. So then she must be saying to herself, like, it's better I say nothing, because I'm in front of everyone, I'm looking like a cheesecake in a way. But again, it has to come from the management. And I think that is why sometimes it's good to have a mixed management, males and females, because a female will see it in one way, and maybe a male, without knowing, might see it in a different way. But then in reality, it's hurtful for the female. Or it could be the other way around. It could be all females, and someone tells the guy, "Okay, why don't you come and sit on my lap?" So it's the same joke reversed. So I think it has to be a lot to do with the management, and also, like you were mentioning, training. I think training plays a very big part. Is people say, "Okay, let's do training on HR, on mindset, on motivation." But even certain jokes, people need to be educated and not pass these comments, because sometimes you just say, "It's better I just shut my mouth because I'm feeling very uncomfortable," even though the joke was meant for me.
Yeah, you're reminding me of a video I saw a couple of weeks ago. I was going around, and I think I can't remember who made the video. I think it was a fairly big company, but I'll dig it up and I'll send it to you. But there are three guys just chilling at the pub, and they're talking about, male banter and the sort of effects that male banter can have. And it's quite an interesting discussion. It's really tightly linked to our topic today, and sort of taps into what you just said about the effects that, what can be an innocent, quote unquote, joke can actually have on people, even in terms of just making them uncomfortable, but also passing on a message that that we don't want to pass on in the workplace or in any other context, basically. So yeah, we pick our battles, but sometimes even really seemingly innocent remarks can actually do a lot of harm. So I think it's always good to be careful about that and to be receptive to that. Yeah, so I don't know if Carla, as a language teacher, actually has a comment on this.
Well, I wanted to pick a bit of what Catherine said, and also Gordon. They are talking about one of the main topics, and I do think that most of the time it's not about differences between women and men, but just that women do not feel comfortable. And there is this kind of stereotype that we think that women should do more. Well, actually, they do more respect to what a man does, and it will never get to a balance that we think it this way. We must think that what is done inside of a working sector, or even in another sector, which will also be your house or your commitments, anything. It's not just about working. I think it's more a global way of relating to each other. And if you do not get to a point where women and men are actually balancing and they are actually thinking of the needs of one and the other, then you will not get to this point. In Italy, but Sicily, most of the times you do see families where the woman is mainly a housekeeper and the man is working. And so we do see that like it's necessary for the woman to be perfect at home, perfect cook, perfect with growing the children, but this doesn't mean anything from my point of view. Even if we are not actually working and we are living at home and being a housekeeper, it doesn't mean we should we are actually good in math, English, Italian and any other subject. We need to support our children, and sometimes a male do think like it is part of the house work. But even if you are actually working, and the best part is if even a woman is working and the man just feels comfortable to come back from work and sit down on the sofa, don't actually help in anything, it's not right. So even being a housekeeper, I think it should be seen as a work the same exactly way. And for women who are actually working and they are also a housekeeper, then a man has no excuses at all. We need to be supportive and to support each other. But then if I go to what Gordon said, and it is right that it's just a 5%, I think he said that women that are CEO, and this is sometimes related to the fact that women do not feel comfortable and do not feel supported by the man, and especially when they start thinking about motherhood, then they just pull out and they start thinking differently. They think more about their children, about their growth, about the school, about education, and they don't feel comfortable at work. So most of the time they decide to stop working to be a better mother, a better wife, a better housekeeper, which is not, I don't want to be like a stereotype that you're not supposed to be a housekeeper. You can be both, but it'll be easier for a woman to be a mother, a housekeeper, and a worker if she would be supported at the same time by her man. If she comes back from her work and I'm not asking, well, if the laundry's already out and you have probably put the water in the pan, nothing fandabidosi to start cooking. I'm not expecting a man to be a substitute, which is not supposed to happen. Just be a support. So if a woman has got the support by a man, then that will be much more easier. And I do believe that some in some regions of Italy, especially, this is happening slowly, really slowly, but it is happening. But in itself is not there still. I don't think the percentage is at the same level, and I can see it every day. Even teenagers, girls are not so acceptive. They don't feel like believing in themselves. So they need support, they need a mentor, they need to be mentees, because it is just this way of stereotype we are actually living in that closes our mind and doesn't help us to see a different point of view. see what we can be and what we can do, not on our own, but with the support of a man. Well, I'm not asking a real man, but a true man. We'll say it this way.
Can I just say an observation? I think also maybe this is a question that a woman should speak to her boyfriend or husband-to-be before even they get married. She should, I think, give her vision whether she wants to go and study, I don't know, a master's or PhD, or where she wants to focus on, reach the top of the mountain. And he might say yes, or he might say no, I want 2 kids. My job is very tedious. I cannot help you. I cannot drop them to school and all that. So then maybe she might say, maybe he's not the right guy for me. I don't know. It's a hard one, but maybe I think women should maybe start taking that step. And funny enough about chefs, women are the best chefs, but then in restaurants, mostly they're men. It's just funny enough.
I was actually going to mention this, that whether you're a man or a woman, you need to be careful who you choose. So you need to be really careful who you choose. You need to have certain discussions early on, even early on in the relationship, what you want it to look like, what's your vision, what are your goals, what are your non-negotiables, what are your boundaries. So it's really, really an important conversation to have.
Yeah, those are conversations we should all be having, I think. We've talked about many different topics. We've talked about training, we talked about the workplace, your parenting, your personal experiences, subverting certain stereotypes. And I think the last topic I'd like to discuss is education, because Carla was mentioning how, even among teenagers, you can already witness certain trends. And a while back, I saw a textbook that I think is being used in Italian schools. I'm not sure if, well, it should, I suppose government schools. And there was one of those very simple examples where you had to fill in the gaps, and I think you had to add the verb, and there were these sentences like, mom irons, mom does the dishes, mom cleans the house. And that was sort of those were the standard examples that were in the textbook. And of course, that's passing on a certain message. Of course, there wasn't written mom is an engineer, mom, I don't know, mom owns a big car or anything like that. So where does it start? How can we basically change these trends in education? What is the role of education? What is your experience with education? Anything around these questions that you want to share? Do you have any positive examples as well? Because we've talked a lot about negative trends, but maybe you have some positive examples to bring to the table.
I think maybe when, let's say, girls and boys, obviously, they choose certain jobs, they should be exposed to a variety of jobs. So it's not, okay, these are jobs for a woman, these are jobs for men. I mean, obviously, there are certain jobs which has to be a man. Let's say if it's a builder, obviously, you cannot have a woman carrying stones or anything like that. But whenever they're mentioning, they get different people, obviously a lawyer, an accountant, a nurse, engineer, an astronaut, or whatever it is, that it should be opened to everyone. And also women, again, according to statistics, women usually are like 2 to 3 years more advanced than boys. I think to a certain age. I don't know exactly what age. I think they say between 16 to 18 or something like that, or even maybe a bit earlier. And that's true. So if girls are more advanced than boys, why then, after a certain amount of time, it goes down? And then the male becomes superior. And again, I don't maybe use the word superior because we're not superior in any way, but something happens, I don't know, between 20 and 30. And the older, again, I was reading an article, the older a woman gets, 40 to 50, the wage gap becomes more, which in reality should be less. Again, I don't know why. I mean, this was just an article I was reading. There were no reasons why or based on what grounds. This was a European study. But in a way, it was very surprising because the gap should be closer the older you get, not bigger.
Definitely. Claire, I see you'd like to chip in.
I think we should ensure that any educational materials given to children, they show genders in equal measure, and even exploring gender concepts, roles from different communities, helping students identify instances of gender bias.
Has your experience been like this, Claire, or what do you remember? Because, you know, my memories of school now are sort of...
Mine was very different to this, but I would have liked to have been taught about gender-based violence and gender stereotypes and how the media can have an effect on us. I'm hoping that in the future, these will be, they will put these in schools. Like, gender is a very, very big topic.
I would tend to agree with Claire, and I would broaden it out. And I think you were already going there. I mean, it's about acceptance of a lot of things: roles, race, religion, gender. You know, again, it comes back to respect. And I agree with you. It's a lovely, just that people should have equal time, just seeing other people. And no, I agree with that entirely. Like I said earlier on, I have a very different experience. We just had very good educators, and we had a lady who had been an engineer, and so a lot of us went into engineering. So the idea of having a role model and having the ability to explore all these different professions works. I would slightly disagree with Gordon's comment about like women can't do certain trades. There is ways and means. Like, I work in power stations, there's ways and means of using tooling and modifying things so that, you know, all these trades can be inclusive. Are we going to get a majority of women in there? Probably not. Like, I don't see it happening. And so I think as well, part of this whole question mark for me, like, a lot of what I've heard today has been really and truly not my experience, that like I wasn't expected to have a job, or I was expecting that maybe those things were expected of me and I never noticed. But I've had a very different experience where I could go and I could achieve, and everybody around me is the same. So I kind of have a more nuanced view of this whole issue that we're facing, because it's not about, is the law there or not? It's not about whether, you know, somebody told me I shouldn't get a degree and get married. Like, nobody ever told me that. But by the same token, I think we need to define the scope of what it is we're looking for. Because are we looking for that 50% of women are out there building roads? Are we looking, like, what are we actually looking for? And then working within those boundaries. And you know, you alluded to it earlier on, Gordon. The quotas in the Maltese Parliament at the moment is like, is that really? Is it a knee-jerk reaction? Are we going too far? And that is my fear with diversity and with the whole conversation, because it's so needed and it's so important. And the fear is that it ends up becoming a joke, because then all of a sudden, you know, it goes beyond it, where nobody can have any fun, nobody can talk about anything, nobody, you know what I mean? So like, I live in that like bubble where it's like not too much one way, not too much the other way. So I think what we're talking about, this whole conversation, is very nuanced in my head, what we're actually looking to achieve.
That's a great question. Carla, would you like to chip in before we wrap up?
Well, expecting that, actually, I do agree with Catherine, and what are we actually looking for? Is it a percentage, or is it actually a different point of view of what we are up to? I don't agree with Gordon when he says that we don't expect women to lift stones and why? Actually, when I was small and I started driving go-karts, and I was the only girl inside of my category, and there was 60 male drivers, well, young male drivers. I remember mothers and fathers, but the worst were the mothers, at the edge of the track, insulting, just because I was faster or I was in front of their son, which was actually stupid, but and there were women. So it is actually something inside of our culture that doesn't expect a woman to be able to do something. I do travel a lot, and I'm happy when I get on a bus and there's a female driver. I'm not saying that females are better than men in general, but there is actually a percentage which is low. But if a female feels comfortable in any subject, any kind of work, in any reality, and feels like she can stick with it and relate with customers, relate with the environment where she is, we should get actually the point out when we start school. Even in kindergartens, too many times children are asked to talk about work for a man and work for a woman. Why? There's no work that should be done by a man. There's no work that should be done by a woman. I believe that anything can be done by a man, anything can be done by a woman. In my personal experience, I had to work harder. Yes, I did. I had to go like every day to the gym, 3 hours a day, and that did allow me to be at the top of my category. I do remember that when I asked my father to design my helmet, I didn't ask, well, my expression and my asking was not to have flowers, stars, or pink, or anything that could have been related to a girl. I didn't have my name written on it or anything. My helmet was actually normal helmet that anyone could have, just because when I was small, I used to feel like guilty when I used to get back to the team, and I used to see a father going against his son just because he was behind me. I was like, is you right? You know, I've been training as the same as his son has done. And so I do believe that there's no differences between women and men. Anybody can do whatever a man can do. You just need to be a trainer to train, obviously, and have a good support. So anything can be changed in education. I've been to England several times, and it is actually different when you get on a bus and there's a female driver and nobody cares. Everybody goes in like, okay. It's not the same in Italy yet. So I think being part of Europe, being part of a different company, a different reality has opened their minds a lot. And it is working slowly, but it is working. But we don't want to have a percentage at how many women are actually working in that sector. What we need is how many women are at the top, did realize, get their dream job, no matter on how many there is. But is she doing what she likes, or did she change her job because she didn't like it, and she didn't like the environment? She was actually not supported, or lived in a male dominated sector, and she didn't feel comfortable. This is what we need. We need women, not a lot, even a few, but that feel comfortable in it, I suppose.
Thanks, Carla. We've talked about a lot of topics today. We've talked about men being mentors. We've talked about women speaking up for themselves. We've talked about the role of parents, how pampering can sometimes go wrong and actually reinforce certain gender stereotypes. We talked about banter, representation, subverting stereotypes, and a lot more. So I really want to thank you for bringing this richness to the conversation. And I especially want to thank Catherine for raising the question of what are we doing this for? What are we aiming for? Which I think is a question that should really accompany us in our day-to-day. Perhaps ultimately we want to move past certain binaries, but we're not there yet. Perhaps I'm throwing it out there. And perhaps we also want more men having these conversations. So I really want to thank Gordon for being here today and putting himself out there. So before we wrap up, I'd like to ask each one of you in turn, and you can just freely go ahead and unmute and share your thoughts, to send out a message, ideally to men and boys out there, your message to them, what they can do to support gender equality. And if you want, you can also send out a message to girls or to anybody out there who would want to support gender equality.
Okay, I'll jump in. My message to guys is to listen, which I think is Carla. So I've just possibly robbed Carla's thing, but yesterday and today I've heard listen and try to understand and speak back and explain. It's about the communication. What do you think about us trying to have equality is not equality to you? And we have this conversation. Let's stop dancing around it. Let's talk.
What I would like to say to men is make sure that you are actually collaborating. I do think that collaboration is at the base of everything, and stop stereotyping any kind of work. A girl can change a wheel, and she can also teach in a class, and the same will be for a man.
Cleo Gordon, what is your message?
I would say being more respectful towards others, realizing that both genders can do both. like Carla said, teamwork, not competition, and also voicing your own opinion and challenging your beliefs. I would like to send out also the message that whatever you put your mind to, you can achieve, no matter what anyone else says.
Okay, so for me, it would be more for the woman. I would say number one, change your mindset. You can do anything you want, like Nike says, just do it. And I think sometimes women, how should I put it? They don't believe in themselves. Maybe when they're comparing themselves to man, which in reality should never happen. They can do anything as much as us. We're just as equal as them, as they're just as equal as us. And I think that they should maybe work together more and help each other, I think, to obviously change the way, even just going to a conference and listening to maybe 5 women on a panel would be amazing. Why not?
Getting out of your comfort zone, maybe. Thanks, everyone, for this really insightful conversation. I'm really grateful for the past hour together. I want to thank you for your contributions and your time, and also for your mentoring on the project, both as actually mentors and mentees, for your participation in the project as a whole. We really, really appreciate it. We're going to have another live session in about a month's time, so stay tuned. I'm saying this to our Facebook followers. And we also have a podcast that we're running. We will be sharing details of the podcast on our page, and you'll be able to listen in. We're going to delve deeper into similar issues. Each episode has a different theme. So, and we'll see the participation of different mentors and mentees, so you'll have an opportunity to get to know them as well. Thanks a lot, and have a great evening.
Thank you. 21st, we have the meeting, right?